Just a reminder, for our prayers, we used to have the barn up here, the little wooden barn. We're in the barn, obviously. If you didn't see that on your way in, now just to be sensitive to not having extra contact, it's on the way out. So if you didn't draw a name to pray for or some names to pray for on the way in, feel free, and we encourage you to draw some on your way out. If you join me in prayer. Father, we thank you for your love and how you've expressed the foundation of that love through mothers. You may wonder why I took some time to stack some of those blocks this morning. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about was lessons learned. And I have to speak for my mother, lessons that I learned from my mother. Because that created a foundation. And I learned from her to be compassionate, to be committed, and to be courageous. And Jesus himself recognized the importance of that foundation of love through motherhood with his own mother. And this is from an article written by Frank Presley back in 2008 in a magazine that no longer exists, but it used to be called Pulpit Helps. And he says this: "It's doubly significant that the one who was chosen to influence our Lord the most in the days of his earthly life was his mother. She alone was the one with him, all the way from the cradle to the grave. During his boyhood and his youth, he was subject to her as well as to Joseph. And what greater tribute could be paid to the dignity of motherhood than this?" And so the verses this morning that we looked at, and you're still looking at if you're looking at the screen, was Jesus on the cross. And Jesus, while he was on the cross, suffering incredible physical torture, and soon to suffer spiritual separation from God, which is the ultimate torture, because he had never been separated from his Father. He was thinking about his mother. Because in that culture, in that time, there wasn't anyone to take care of people as they got older. And that's often very true in various places around the world today. So your social security system really was your family. And so Jesus thought about his mother. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to his mother, "Dear woman, here is your son." And to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that time on, the disciple took her into his home. Jesus recognized that foundation and how important it was. And if we look at the foundation that I built, it's actually pretty precarious. Because that's really to kind of illustrate the way the world builds things. It looks kind of interesting that way, but it's really not very secure. It's not the type of foundation that's built with a mother's love. Just one little bump. Hey, it's stronger than I thought. Two little bumps, and it comes falling down. But if I rebuilt that using the larger blocks for the foundation, that would certainly symbolize much better the foundation of love that's represented through our mothers. And I realize that maybe some of you didn't have a godly mother when you were growing up. But God, in the verse that was read in the call for worship, points out that he is a mother that comforts all of us. because God is neither male nor female. He's a spirit. He represents the Father. He also represents the mother, because he is complete. And as I was looking at how to express the importance of motherhood, I came across something which I think illustrates how a person, a very famous person, some people say he's the greatest president we've ever had, endured several things. His name is Abraham Lincoln. And just going through a short journey of his life, in 1816, because of the poverty that he was living in, he and his family were forced to leave their home. And he had to work to support his family. In 1818, his mother died. And Abraham Lincoln had this to say about his mother. No one is poor, who has a godly mother. So he is able to look at even the fact he grew up in poverty and his mother died prematurely. He wasn't poor because he had a godly mother. And she built into him a lot of character, which we'll see as we go through some of these things. So in 1831, Lincoln had started a business that failed. In 1832, he ran for the state legislature and lost. He also lost his job. He wanted to go into law but couldn't get into law school. So he borrowed money from a friend to begin a business, and by the end of the year, he was bankrupt. And he spent 17 years to repay his friend that debt. In 1834, he ran for the state legislature again. This time he won. And he was engaged to be married. But his sweetheart died before they could be married, and his heart was broken. By 1836, he had a total nervous breakdown and was in bed for 6 months, basically unable to function. But he came back. In 1838, he ran for the Speaker of the state legislature and was defeated. He sought to be an elector, like in the elector college, and was defeated. In 1843, he ran for Congress again and lost. In 1846, he ran, and this time he won. And he did a very good job. So in 1848, he ran for Congress again, and this time he lost. He sought the job of a land officer in his home state, and he was rejected. In 1854, he ran for the Senate of the United States, and he lost. He sought the vice presidential nomination of his party at the National Convention in 1856 and only got 100 votes. He was soundly defeated, in other words. He ran for the U.S. Senate again in 1858 and lost. But in 1860, he was elected president of the United States. This great example of persistence, I don't know for sure, but I believe was largely because of what his mother instilled in him, his godly mother. Although he was born in poverty and faced defeat throughout his life, if you were counting, he lost 8 elections, twice failed in business, suffered a nervous breakdown. And he could have quit many times, but he did not. He was a champion. He never gave up. And became the greatest president, in my opinion, and many others of the United States. Another thing that I came across, which I think illustrates the importance of the godly mother, this was from a book called How to Be a Hero to Your Kids, written by Josh McDowell and Dick Day. And he's reporting about a broadcast several years ago. It was Valentine's Day, and I was on the Good Morning America show. And David Hartman was interviewing Dr. Benjamin Salk, who was a famous psychologist. Because of Valentine's Day, love was the obvious topic. And so these are the questions that Dave Hartman started with. Is everyone born with the capacity to love? Yes, said Dr. Salk. Then why don't we have more love in the world? Hartman wanted to know. David, Dr. Salt wisely responded, even though we're born with the capacity to love, we need to learn how to love. Then Dr. Salk turned to the camera, looked right into the eyes of millions of people, and added, the greatest things you parents can do for your children is to love each other. That foundation of love. It goes on to say, we agree. Dr. Salk put the problem and its solution in a nutshell. Everyone is born with the capacity to love, but everyone does not learn how to love unless he or she sees it modeled by the most important person in their lives, their parents. So the modeling of that love is so important. And when we look through the Bible at different examples of that, one that stands out is Timothy. Timothy is mentioned in Acts and many other of Paul's letters. He was obviously closely associated with Paul. And the commentators say, and I assume they're correct, that he accompanied Paul on at least two of the three missionary journeys. And Paul speaks very warmly of him. He describes him as a spiritual soldier. He describes him as an athlete. He describes him as a farmer. But in 2 Timothy, chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, he gives credit to his grandmother and to his mother for his faith. Paul talks about how that faith began in them and lived in them, and that he was convinced it now lives in him. And if we look at Timothy and how he was so helpful to Paul in the ministry of sharing the good news of Christ, it's very apparent he learned to be compassionate. He learned to be committed. And he learned to be courageous. And I really believe we learn those lessons at the knees of our mother. And again, going back to that book about how to be a hero to your kids, you know, it's not in the big things. It's not in the Disneyland experiences that they're going to remember. But it's in all those thousands of little things, those small moments that mold the character that your children are going to remember, at least subconsciously. Those moments when you take the time to listen to what's important to them. You allow them to put the skull of an animal on their dresser, even though it doesn't fit in with the decor. You let them keep their bone collection, their rock collection. You let them, with their botany skills, transplant their plants and try to keep them alive. It's all those little things. The big things can be fun, but they don't make character. Again, that same book talks about one of the problems that we often have is that we have rules, but we don't have a relationship, and that's true with our children as well. It's certainly true at Kids Club, I can tell you that. Then you end up with rebellion. You can't have rules and enforce rules effectively if you don't have a relationship. But if you do have that relationship, then you can get response. Not always the response you want, but you can get that response of developing character through that relationship. And the good news is it's never too late to build a relationship. And we all have that important role. One of the very encouraging things to me, because of course, if you look at our group that we used to meet with on Tuesday night, a lot of those youth come from some very tough environments. But having a significant relationship with another adult can make all that difference. All that difference. Again, another couple of individuals that I looked at in trying to illustrate the importance of that foundation of motherhood, that foundation of love, was from a movie called Chariots of Fire. And that was an Academy Award-winning movie several years ago. Many of you have seen it, and the focus of the movie, of course, is Eric Liddell and his faith and refusing to participate, even though he's been honored with the privilege of representing Great Britain during the Olympics in 1924, which were held in Paris, that since his race was going to be on Sunday, he wasn't going to run on Sunday because it violated his faith. But there's another subplot in that whole movie because there's two gifted runners. Harold Abrams was a very gifted runner, and he came from a Jewish background. Eric Little's family was deeply involved in the Christian missionary and also sharing their faith in various ways. Harold Abrams went to Cambridge, and as illustrated in the movie, he was fighting against a feeling of inferiority and his perception of his classmates looking down upon him because of his Jewish heritage. And his whole attitude about running was he wanted to prove himself. It was all about performance. He wanted to win, win, win. In fact, this is a quote from the movie. "I don't run to take a beating." This is from Harold Abrams. "If I can't win, I won't run. I run to win." He even hired his trainer so he could prepare in seclusion because it was all about winning. He wanted to prove himself. Eric Little's family, in fact, his sister Jenny, was discouraging him from participating in the Olympics because she felt that could draw him away from his devotion to God. She was concerned about his faith and his ability to serve the Lord. But Eric reassured her this way. He said, "God made me fast. When I run, I feel his pleasure. To win is to honor him." Whether he won or lost, it wasn't important to Eric. He wanted to do his best. But because of the Christian heritage, the godly mother, the godly father he had, he was able to put it in perspective. He didn't have to prove anything. In fact, you can't prove anything to our Creator. It's all about grace. And so he ran to win. In case you're wondering, Harold Abrams did get a gold medal at that Olympics, but it didn't really have that satisfaction feeling he hoped for. Eric Little, although he refused to run the 100-yard dash, which was his race, he was considered to be the one to win because that was on Sunday. A teammate stepped aside and allowed him to compete in the 400 meter, where he won the gold medal. And for him, it was just a way of honoring God with his talents. And so for mothers, for parents, for children to know that they're more important than the win-loss record. They're more important than their school performance. That's that security they need for them to grow up with that compassion so that they can be committed and that they can be courageous. They can see that acceptance from you and help them accept the acceptance from Jesus that they can never earn. And they can do that very well when they have that foundation of love. And I shared this several years ago, but I think it's worth sharing again. It's from an anonymous person. And they write about the difference between a strong woman and a woman of strength. A strong woman works out every day to keep her body in shape. But a woman of strength kneels in prayer to keep her soul in shape. A strong woman isn't afraid of anything, but a woman of strength shows courage in the midst of her fear. A strong woman won't let anyone get the best of her, but a woman of strength gives the best of her to everyone. A strong woman walks sure-footed, but a woman of strength knows God will catch her when she falls. A strong woman wears the look of confidence on her face, but a woman of strength wears grace. A strong woman has faith that she is strong enough for the journey, but a woman of strength has faith that it is in the journey that she will become strong. And I want to close with some IOUs. This is from Chuck Swindoll, some illustrations that he has in a book that I happen to have. And as you walk through your memories of your mother, hopefully some of these will relate to you. It's addressed, Dear Mom, as I walk through my museum of memories, I owe you for your time, day and night. I owe you for your example, consistent, and dependable. I owe you for your support, stimulating and challenging. I owe you for your humor, sparky and quick. I owe you for your counsel, wise and quiet. I owe you for your humility, genuine and gracious. And I owe you for your hospitality, smiling and warm. And I owe you for your insight, keen and honest. And I owe you for your flexibility, patient and joyful. And I owe you for your sacrifices, numerous and quickly forgotten. And I owe you for your faith, solid and sure. And I owe you for your hope, ceaseless and indestructible. And I owe you for your love, devoted and deep. So the lessons I learned, and I'm still learning from my mother, who passed away in 2018, is still to be compassionate, to be committed, and to be courageous. And I hope you, if not your own mother, you can look to some other godly woman that has instilled some of those life lessons in you so that you can pass that on as the Lord gives you opportunity.